Hey, what's up? It's Jake. It's been a long time. The NHL season is upon us, man, and I'm excited. I've been waiting for hockey to come back all summer. It was definitely not the best thing to watch the Caps win the Cup, but hats off to them. Kudos to Ovi and everybody. Anyways, this season is shaping up to be pretty exciting. There's a lot of teams really went out and did some work in the off season. You got people like the Sharks and the Kings loading up out west, and you've still got the Jets and the Predators, and Vegas is still making a push to try not to be a fluke. You've got a handful of teams out west that are on the cusp of being good, and then you've got some teams that are really kind of not great. And then in the East, you've got, obviously, the Caps won the Cup finally. They got over the hump. But you've got teams like, Toronto is definitely talented. They're young. They're hungry. I don't know if they can do it, but, I mean, hell, they got as good a chance as anyone. Then you have teams like the Lightning, who are just, like, they're perennially good, but they just have to get over the hump. I think that there's as good a chance for them to win. The Penguins are still looking pretty strong. Obviously, I'm a huge Pens fan. I've been a Pens fan pretty much my whole life. But when the Columbus Blue Jackets entered the NHL, they were in the Western Conference. And I'm geographically close to Columbus, so they were my West team. And then when they came over to the East and they joined the Penguins division, it made it hard to root for them because I was always rooting for the Pens. But over the last year or two, I've really started to embrace both teams. And because the Jackets are so close to me, I go to a lot of their games. And I ended up going to the preseason game last Friday where they played the Penguins. So I was sort of rooting for both teams. It was a really exciting game, tons of goals. A couple things to note from that. Obviously, it's preseason, but it was the final preseason game, I think, for the Pens. And I think maybe the Jackets had one more. But, all the stars were in the lineup for the Penguins. There was a few guys that stood out. Juuso Riikola, I think, is a stud. Granted, he's a rookie. He's pretty young. But I think he really has a lot to offer, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him make a serious impact this year. And another thing to mention about the Penguins, and he wasn't in the lineup the night I saw them, but Daniel Sprong, man. Everybody has this high hope that Daniel Sprong is going to be some kind of stud in the NHL, and maybe he will. Maybe he will develop into an NHL caliber player, but he had all season last year to impress someone enough to get up into the lineup. There were a number of injuries last year that, if he were ready, it's not like there was a log jam. I think some other guys got called up and people were upset that it wasn't Sprong. But the coaches and the development staff, they know more than I do. And they know more than you do. And they know more than 99% of the other fans. And I would say that if they didn't think he was NHL caliber last season when a couple guys got hurt, that says a lot. That says a lot about Sprong. And he spent the entire year trying to get up to the NHL level. And in spite of a ton of opportunities for the Pens to put him in the lineup, they chose not to. And that speaks volumes about his readiness and his actual level of play. This preseason, you would think like, hey, he fought all last year. He's really trying to get into the lineup. He's going to dazzle everyone in the preseason. He's going to score a ton of goals. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with. And that just hasn't happened. And at this point, it's hard to see him making an impact at the NHL level. When he was a couple years ago, when he was super young, you could say, oh, well, the sky's the limit for this guy. He needs to develop a little bit, but he'll be ready. Well, here we are. It's 2018. He's had a while to try to develop. And some of the guys who've been called up in his place, they aren't setting the world on fire. They're just not. So the fact that he can't even leapfrog them, my obviously, if I'm being optimistic, I hope he turns it around, becomes a stud, and he scores 50 goals, and the rest will be history. But I wonder if it might be time to just punt Daniel Sprong. Unfortunately, at this point, I don't think his trade stock's worth a whole lot, so it's not like we're going to trade him and get anything serious for him. I think we could have done that last year, maybe. I think there were enough whispers that he was still an elite prospect last year, but after this preseason, I'm not positive those whispers are still there. On the flip side of that game that I watched between the Pens and the Blue Jackets, if there's one thing that I have to say about the Blue Jackets, they have to prioritize getting a deal done with Panarin. He is an absolute stud. I mean, I watched him all last year, and I thought he was a beast all last year, but in that preseason game, he was electric. He was positively dynamic. He blew every single other skater on the ice out of the water. I mean, he was an absolute legend on the ice. He was everywhere. He played with energy. He was fast. He was doing all kinds of stuff, making plays, getting away from defenders. I mean, I couldn't believe how good he was. I mean, to watch him play, if you watch the game in person and you're watching him away from the puck and everything, those are the kinds of things that you wouldn't see on TV because they're only showing you what's going on right this second with the puck. But if you watch him play, it's just incredible how talented he is and how much of a game changer he is. You can build a team around an Artemi Panarin. I know he's a little bit older, but if Columbus has any aspirations of making a serious cup push, they need to do it around Panarin. Now, the other big thing that they have to deal with is trying to get a deal done with Bobrovsky. I have mixed feelings about that deal. I think Bobrovsky is an elite goaltender, possibly the best in the league when he's on his game. But when he's off his game, which happens pretty regularly in the postseason, he's a liability. I think that if it were me running the team, I would prioritize signing Panarin over signing Bobrovsky, if it's an either or. If they can do both, then we're not even having this conversation. If they can do both, then I want to see them do both, and that would make me happy. But if they can't do both and they can only do one or the other, I think it's absolutely, I mean, you cannot you cannot let Panarin walk. If it's possible at all to sign Panarin, that has to be priority number one. If you can get Bobrovsky done after that, great. If you can't, then you can deal with the fact that you're seeing Bobrovsky walk, because you can replace him with, even if it's somebody who's just good. If you put a Panarin on the ice and you put a couple of the guys around him that are there already, they have the ability to outscore an opponent. And I think you saw in the past with the Penguins when they had Fleury. Now, granted, the last couple of years the Penguins had Fleury, I thought Fleury was absolutely stellar. Very consistent, very, 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 very good. But there were several years where Fleury was just sort of, he was positively dynamic sometimes, and then there were other times where he couldn't stop a beach ball. And some of the goals that he let up over his career in Pittsburgh were just, they are heartbreakers. Floaters from the blue line and stuff like that. And I'm not here to rag on Fleury. The point I'm trying to make is that there was a year where, I don't remember what year it was, but Fleury won 40 games, and he was just sort of okay. Like, he was very inconsistent. He gave up a ton of goals, but the Penguins were scoring a shit ton of goals, man. There were games that Penguins were scoring 5, 6, 7, 8 goals a game, and it didn't matter that Fleury gave up 6 because they won the game. You know what I mean? So if you can get a win by outscoring people, then a win's a win. I think there are nights where Bobrovsky is going to get you a shutout, but the Blue Jackets are built offensively at this particular moment that they don't need to get a shutout to get a victory. Does that make sense? Like, there are teams that need a shutout to get any kind of victory going because they may only score 1 or 2 goals a game. The Jackets are not that team if they have Panarin. Now, if you take Panarin off their squad, then maybe they are that team that needs a shutdown defense, and they need a goalie who's not going to give up anything. But if you put Panarin on the ice, there's always going to be a chance that he gets you a couple goals in a game. I mean, it's just, he's that good. I mean, I can definitely see him being a 50-goal scorer. I can see him being a Hart candidate. I can see him being an Art Ross candidate. He is that good. And I think this year, especially if they can hold on to him all year, he'll prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt. And if Bobrovsky, if they can keep both of them, I think they have a chance to compete for the Cup. I'm not saying they're going to win the Cup. I'm not saying they're going to win the East. But I'm saying that I think they have as good a chance right now as I've ever seen the Blue Jackets have in their entire history. Because even when they had Rick Nash was great. He wasn't holding a candle to current day Artemi Panarin in terms of being electric on the ice, being somebody who wows you every single night. Panarin steps on the ice and it's a different game. It's not the same game. I mean, it's like, I watched Crosby a lot when he was younger, and I mean, I still think Crosby's the best player in the world, maybe second best to Connor McDavid at this point. But I mean, Panarin stepping on the ice does to me what watching Sid step on the ice, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago did, which is, he's going to do something amazing. And everyone talks about McDavid, everyone talks about Matthews, everyone talks about McKinnon, and that's totally, that's totally legit. None of those guys are, are false at all. They are all the real deal. But people, I think, sleep on Panarin to a point that, I don't know if that's really the smartest move, because he is a legit number one elite winger. And maybe he doesn't get the love because he's not a center, but oh my God, man, he is a guy to build around. So I'm really excited about the Blue Jackets, and I'm excited about the Penguins. I'm interested to see what they're going to do with Sprong. I really don't see him making an impact at the NHL level, at least for the Penguins. You might trade him to some other team who's maybe got a little more of a need for a good winger like him. Or maybe he's not a good winger at all. I don't know. Maybe he flames out and we never hear his name again. I don't know. But yeah, so the East right now, you have Tampa pushing hard, and their window is still open, but who knows how long. I mean, they've got everybody right now, it seems like. They've, with Stamkos and Kucherov and Hedman and all those guys, I mean, they're legit. And Vasilevsky's just ridiculous in goal. That's going to be a tough team to beat moving forward. Like I said, the Leafs definitely, they're built well. They have a good D. Their goaltending is pretty solid, and that's assuming they don't get any injuries in goal. They ended up putting two different goalies, McElhinney and Picard, on waivers, and both of them got claimed. So that's pretty much all of their depth in the minors for NHL caliber goaltending. The Penguins, on the other hand, still have 3, so that's a plus. But yeah, as far as the Leafs go, that loss may or may not affect them. Obviously, if there's no injuries, then they may be fine. But if they run into anything kind of like what Las Vegas ran into last year, they could really be in tough shape. Yeah, the Caps are the Caps. I mean, they're still great. They won the Cup, so they're definitely beaming with confidence, and they know they can do it now. A biggest part of trying to accomplish anything is knowing that it's a possibility. The ghosts of, whispers of people talking about how they can't get over the hump and stuff, all that stuff is gone. So, Ovi and company are definitely in the thick of things, and I mean, as long as you have Braden Holtby, you have a pretty good chance of winning some games. So, the East is super interesting. There's a ton of teams. I'm sure I'm forgetting some that are really going to make a push. But I'm interested to see how everything's going to pan out in the East. Like I said, out West, there's some teams that really loaded up. Erik Karlsson went out West. The Kings got Ilya Kovalchuk. I mean, it's wide open in the West. The Predators are still trying to get over that hump, but they've still got Pekka Rinne. They've still got a talented defense, as talented as any defense in the league. They've got some killers on offense. I mean, they're really on the cusp it's just, there's so much talent in the NHL nowadays that there is no team that's just a clear-cut favorite to win it all. I just love hockey. I love it. I'm excited it's back. Can't wait to see how the teams do this year. Go Pens, go Blue Jackets. It's been a while since I did one of these videos. I haven't talked about hockey in a while, and here it is. So the season's starting to roll, and you'll be getting a lot more of this from me, especially once it's too cold for me to ride my bike. Yesterday I rode about 50 miles in the pouring down rain, a thunderstorm, and there was actually a tornado not too far from here. So you know, that doesn't stop me from riding. The cold probably won't stop me from riding, but I won't ride when it's snowing. So we'll see. But yeah, you'll probably see a little more of this. Anyways, if you do happen to watch, thanks. Appreciate it.